Welcome to our online class. This is our very first lesson that Beyond Water is offering to students all around the world. Not everybody can come to us, so we're coming to you. In our first lesson, we're going to learn the what. What is development work about? What's the difference between aid and development? We're going to have a quick interview between my husband Pete and I that we did online, and it might answer a few questions. Really, what is aid about? Why is development? Is that a bit different? Are they just these words that we hear about? So what we're going to do with our online class of this one is first of all we're going to watch the interview between Pete and I. So Pete, what's aid?
Aid is basically where there's a disaster happens in the country and a whole lot of people bring equipment in to support that aid. Like if you had an earthquake and tsunami, your houses get washed out, your food's low, your water's not there, so you've made basically people get together to supply temporary housing, water, food, the essentials. So aid is basically helping at that time of need.
So it's an emergency,
Yeah,
right?
it's an emergency.
It's short period.
Yeah.
Here is a tsunami, the
Yeah.
effects of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here is an earthquake and the effects of that.
Yep.
Here's another one that people don't think about, and that can be a famine. So a famine is a lot because of a lot of issues, but the effects come out really, really fast. And it's when people come in an emergency, they come together, working fast. And this is often where there's big international agencies who are overseeing it, and then little agencies on the ground fixing it. So development work is involved community. It has to involve the community leaders as well.
Definitely.
There's often government little rankings on things. That might be a town, it might be a district. You've also got to look at maintenance, because I know in East Africa there's no such word as maintenance, is there, Pete?
No, there's not.
So people want, so Pete said a medical clinic, but what if they can't get the medication? What if they haven't got an officer, a medical officer who is allowed by the government, has a license to be able to do that? So it's not just that one thing. So when we look at water, we'll talk about school toilets.
Yep.
We started with school toilets because we knew that 30% of schools don't have water. But then what's an important thing with school toilets?
We've got to have hand washing.
That's right. So that means you've got to have water tank and guttering, but do they actually have enough water coming in for that? And where is the nearest water supply?
And what is that water supply like?
That's right. So it might be bringing in waterborne diseases. So there's all these things that we have to look at. So while we started with school toilets, we've changed the design. You've got a great design. Thanks to Lucian, our Kiwi engineer who set that up. We put water tank and guttering on that. We have a hand washing program for kids. So what's more important, aid or development?
I think both are.
That's right.
Because basically without aid, you can't go on development. But without development, you can't improve people's lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. So aid is an emergency procedure, but it should be short term. If there's like a war going on, like in some of the areas we work in East Africa, sometimes there's civil war, you can't do any development work. It's too dangerous. And also the rebels will wreck it and things like that. So you don't want to spend time and money on that, and you don't want to put people's lives in danger.
That's right.
So as you can see, it's not that one is more important than another. It's just that there's different times for things. So if there is a famine, an earthquake, a tsunami, something big that happens like that people aren't prepared for, there has to be aid that comes in. But it can be really tricky. Roads have to be built. Airports have to be rebuilt. Can we get planes in? If there is an earthquake, maybe there is no airport anymore. So these are some of the things we have to think about in aid, because people go, well, let's just raise some money and get it to them straight away. Well, that's not as easy as what it sounds. But with development work, it can take some time. In fact, it can take years. The process can be quite long. But aid should not be going on for years and years. People should be getting to a point, once they have water, food, shelter, they should be able to stand on their feet a little bit more and then get going. Now I'm going to show you this triangle here. So this is called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So what's the basic needs up to things that do we really, really need? Do we have to have respect? Actually, it's really nice to have respect, but do we have to have freedom? It's fantastic to have freedom, but those are way up on the list. But if we don't have air, we don't have water, we don't have food, somewhere to sleep, we really are in trouble. So have a look at this and see if you can remember some of the things. What's the most important? What's the least important? So we're going to take a look at a video right now of how one girl in what's called a slum. I want you to find out more information about what a slum is and how she has to go get water and then just do her laundry at home. So just do a basic washing, but it's not as easy as turning on a tap. Let's have a look at that video now.
Unataka sabuni ya ngapi ya gani? Ya menengai.
Chini kidogo tu.
Umetoka.
Wewe msikuja hapo mbele.
So how would you like to do that every single day? It would be interesting, wouldn't it? Imagine having to do the laundry for your whole entire family, but first of all you have to go and get the water. What if you live in a country where there isn't a lot of water, and so you have to go and pay for it? But then you have to decide, if this is the only water that I have, I also have to use it for bathing in. I have to use it for washing our plates. And what she didn't tell you is that sometimes they have to do all three, because in that part of the world, when there's like a special show on, they close the water down in most of the city and people have no water at all. So they have to take the water, use it for their clothes, their washing of the dishes, and for themselves, all with the same water. And that can be pretty gross, right? So that's why giving water is really, really important. So here's some questions. Question number 1. Which do you think is more important, aid or development? and why. It's very important to answer why. Number 2. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it was a triangle, pretty colours, what do you think is not a need, like an actual real need? Is there something there that you think we can do without? See if there's 1 or 2 things there. And if you think, no, somebody can live without these, why? Number 3. Why is a developing country called developing? So there are 2 areas. There's the developed world and there's the developing world. A place like New Zealand, the US, Australia, UK, they're called the developed world. Other places are called developing countries, places like in Africa or Indonesia or Papua New Guinea, places like that. They used to be called third world countries, but we tend not to call those anymore. They're called developing countries. I want you to find some information on why it's called a developing country and what are some of the areas that they could work on or need strength in to get to that status of being a developed country.